Alright guys, so you can see I've already started filling out my notebook for this book. I've put some character names on there. We've read Berenstain Bears and we've watched Berenstain Bears before, so we know that the main characters are going to be Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Brother Bear, and Sister Bear. So I've already started to fill that out so it will be a little bit easier. And as we're going through, we're going to pay attention to the way that our characters are interacting and see what we can learn about them. So we are going to be reading, let me go back a page. We are going to be reading The Berenstain Bears and the Blame Game by Stan and Jan Berenstain. You all know the Bear family that lives in the big treehouse down a sunny dirt road in Bear Country. And, of course, you know Mama Bear, warm, friendly Mama Bear, whom seldom is heard a discouraging word. But lately, Mama hadn't been all that friendly. Her smile was gone, and she was feeling very discouraged. Why? Because life in the big treehouse had turned into one long, miserable, never-ending blame game. Alright, so we've got a few things to write down about Mama Bear here. We found out Mama Bear is warm and friendly. So I'm going to write that down under Mama Bear. She's friendly. And here, warm doesn't mean that she feels warm. It means that she's friendly. It means that you want to talk to her because she's nice. That's what warm means when you're talking about Mama Bear right now. But then it says lately Mama hadn't been all that friendly. Her smile was gone and she was feeling very discouraged. So maybe I'll go back and I'll put usually friendly because this is a series and we know that Mama Bear usually is friendly. She's usually a really nice, friendly character. She's usually friendly, but now she's feeling discouraged. Okay, let's go to the next page. Cries of, "He started it! No, she started it! And it was her fault! No, it was his fault!" filled the air from day to night. Life in the big treehouse had become one long argument about who had started it and whose fault it was, and Mama had had quite enough of it. So, when she heard the sounds of breaking glass and spilling water, she rushed into the living room. There she found a mess of broken glass, spilled water, and a scatter of roses on the floor. Standing over the mess were brother and sister. They were pointing at each other and shouting, "It was her fault! No, it was his fault!" over and over again. Okay, so let's pay attention to the way that these two are interacting. Okay? These two characters, we know that somehow this vase got broken, right? We don't know how, but we know that they immediately started to blame each other. So that tells us that they're not taking responsibility for their actions. So under Brother Bear and Sister Bear, I'm going to put not taking responsibility and blaming others. Okay? And then I can put the same thing under Sister Bear because she's doing the exact same thing, right? So maybe we'll have something different later, but for now, they are really acting the same. Okay, so notice we found out that they're blaming each other because of the way that they're talking to each other. Mama looked at the mess. She had cut those roses and put them in the vase with water just that morning. She looked at brother and sister who were still pointing and shouting at each other. It was time to stop the blame game. Mama decided to put her foot down hard, so hard it shook the room. "Enough of this blame game!" she shouted. "I want to know who really started it, and I want to know now!" Well, it was like peeling back the layers of an onion. It was enough to make you cry. Mama might have cried if she hadn't been so angry, and the more brother and sister pointed and shouted, the angrier Mama got. So here, you can see when they're interacting, I'll go back a page. When they're interacting here, Mama, she was feeling kind of down and blue before, but once she started talking to Brother and Sister Bear, she got really angry. So I'm going to put that she's angry at brother and sister. Okay? But we only find that out because they're all talking on this page. So remember, we're paying attention to where the characters are talking. He knocked it over, cried sister. He made the mess. But that was only because she was trying to poke me in the ribs, shouted brother. I was not trying to poke him, protested sister. I was just trying to tickle him because he tickled me this morning. So it kind of sounds like they're having trouble letting things go, right? They keep having to come back at each other. They keep having to get back. They have to get their revenge on someone else, and then eventually the vase broke. So down here, I'm going to write that they are trying to get revenge. But that was because she tickled me last night. But that was because he put a rubber snake on my bed. But that was because she put a squeaky toy on my chair and it squeaked when I sat down. Yeah, they really can't let this go. And so it went. But, because. Mama understood that she wasn't getting the bottom of anything, but she was getting to the end of her patience. Her head was a whirl with buts because as rubber snakes, squeaky toys, broken glass, spilled water, and scattered roses. Enough! She shouted. Enough of what? Asked Papa Bear. He'd been fixing up the downstairs bay window and heard the shouting. From what I've heard, he said, looking at the mess on the floor, there's more than enough blame to go around. So instead of playing the blame game, why don't we just go to work and solve the problem? Oh, so it sounds like Papa is being a problem solver here. And he's being very understanding. And he's being really kind to Brother Bear and Sister Bear, even though they just broke that vase. So the way that he's talking to them shows me that he's a very understanding and kind and thoughtful character. Let's deal with the broken glass for starters. Brother, you fetch the dustpan and broom. Sister, you bring the paper towels from the kitchen. Papa quickly swept the bigger pieces of broken glass into the dustpan. What about the water and the roses and the little pieces of broken glass? Asked Sister. Mamma, said Papa, will you please pick up the roses? But look out for the thorns in the broken glass. Then he laid the paper towels on the whole mess. He swept what was left into the dustpan. Mamma put the roses into another vase. Good for Papa! He had put a stop to the blame game. Papa went back to his workshop. The cubs went out to play. But while Papa was putting his paint and putty away, he heard the sound of broken glass. He rushed outside. The bay window he had just painted and puttied was broken. There stood brother and sister, pointing at each other. Sister had a bat. Brother had a glove. There was a baseball in the grass among the pieces of broken glass. Papa bit his lip, counted to 10, took a deep breath, and did a very good imitation of a volcano. It was his fault. He was the one who wanted to play ball. He was the one who threw it. His fault, his fault, his fault. It was her fault. She's the one who hit it. Her fault, her fault, her fault. So it doesn't seem like they've learned a lesson from the way they're still talking to each other. It seems to me, said Mamma, who had heard the crash, that instead of shouting and pointing fingers, we should get to work and solve the problem. And that's what they did. They picked up the glass and went to work. It took some doing, but after a while the window was painted and puttied as good as new. Of course, there are times when someone really is to blame for something, but most of the time it's important to remember there's usually enough blame to go around. The end. Alright, so eventually Sister Bear and Brother Bear learned a lesson, maybe. They were still blaming each other right at the end, but Mama Bear learned how to work together to solve, I'm going to spell it right, there we go, solve problems. So, we learned a lot about our characters from that book, and we learned most of it from when they were talking to each other, especially when it came to Papa Bear. We learned a lot about Papa Bear from the way that he treated the other characters in the book. He treated them with kindness and respect, and he was very understanding. We also learned a lot from the way that Brother Bear and Sister Bear were talking to each other. We learned that they were not being respectful. I'm going to put disrespect. They were not being respectful to their parents or to each other. So we can learn a lot about our characters from the way that they choose to talk to each other. So as you're reading this week, you'll be able to read whatever book it is you want. As usual, I'll link on Epic, or you can pick a book from your house. I want you to pay attention to the way that your characters talk to other people in the book and decide, are they talking respectfully? Are they being disrespectful? Are they being kind, friendly? Are they being rude or mean? So pay attention to the way that they're talking, and also as an extra challenge this week, pay attention to the way that you're talking to your parents or to your siblings and decide, am I talking respectfully and kindly, or am I talking disrespectfully and unkindly? All right, guys, go get to work on some reading and being kind and respectful.